Good morning. My name is Herbert Nance, and this is my personal statement. Are you my ally? Respectfully, I would ask you not to answer that for yourself until you hear or read my personal statement in full. My personally painful truth. I have directly experienced and been a victim of numerous forms of discrimination throughout my life. However, I have been racially discriminated against in every stage of my life. While that might sound unbelievable, I acknowledge 20 life-changing moments of individual, interpersonal, institutional, structural, and systemic racism in my life. Sadly, these are not all the components and moments, but I can speak to these specific examples in detail and at length, which cross my educational, personal, professional, social, and volunteer aspects of my entire life to date. From a high level, I share them now with disappointment and vulnerability. Number one, in elementary school here in San Antonio, being allowed to play with a friend only outside because his parents would not allow him to play with me inside their home. Number two, education here in middle school in San Antonio, being bullied so much on the school bus with name calling, one of which was Black F. The bus driver would yell at me and make me sit in the front so she did not have to hear it anymore. Number three, education here in middle school in San Antonio as well. Being one of a few minorities in a citywide choir and being asked by another chorister if I was on scholarship like the others. Number four, here in high school in San Antonio, being told that I should not be singing classical music and should think about singing gospel music instead. Number five, high school here in San Antonio, being told that Black people should only be Baptists and not Presbyterians. Number six, high school, but in Fort Worth, Texas, being at a high school choir camp while visiting the mall with other campers, we came back to the parking lot to find that every car had a KKK recruitment flyer on it. Number seven, here in San Antonio, being called an Uncle Tom by other kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Number eight, here in San Antonio, being told, you're a nice guy, but I can't date Black guys. Number nine, in college in Denton, Texas, being in a group of Black students singled out by a professor of music to model singing a Negro spiritual for the other majority white classmates because in his words, they weren't giving him the sound that he was looking for. Number 10, in Austin, being told, sorry, but I don't date Black guys. Number 11, college in Austin, being selected as an apprentice to an academy in Austria. And while there, individuals had incorporated the N-word into their vocabulary, where I also could not get served at restaurants. It was affecting me so much, I was experiencing nosebleeds and headaches daily. Ultimately, my parents told me to come home. Number 12, professional. In Austin, being called a jungle bunny by a coworker. Number 13, in Austin, being called boy by an elected official at a public governmental agency. Number 14, professional. In Austin, being called boy by a C-suite executive at a nonprofit governmental support agency. Number 15, in Los Angeles, California, being told I won't date Black guys anymore. Number 16, as a volunteer in San Diego, California, being singled out by a choral director in front of white peers to audition for Porgy from Porgy and Bess, and being asked to accompany him to a local Black high school as part of their underprivileged outreach program to assist. Number 17, as a volunteer also in San Diego, California, not being allowed to serve on one nonprofit board because there was already a Black person on it. Number 18, as a volunteer in San Diego, California, while serving on a different nonprofit board in the role of secretary, having to enter into a dialogue as to whether or not, if I shifted into the role of president of the board, if it might impact donations to the organization negatively. Number 19, as a professional in San Diego, being pushed out of an organization after 13 years of positive reviews and only one promotion, only to find out that concurrently, the executive level had been working to promote all of my mid-management equals the subsequent pay period immediately following my separation date. And number 20, as a volunteer here in San Antonio, after working over the phone with an individual, once we met in person, they had an inappropriate immediate reaction to my race, which then they apologized for profusely. I hold a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from the University of Texas at Austin with almost 20 years business operations experience in energy, government, for-profit, creative arts, and nonprofit industries. I was so optimistic in coming back to San Antonio, where since my initial departure in 1996, there had been a shift of the demographics of the city where one minority had now become the majority. Where although the Black or African Americans are only 6.4%, it was part of the 75% citywide total average of people of color. While I have been asked if I have thought about taking down my picture on my LinkedIn profile, I have not brought myself to do it, especially because at application, I do answer the questions honestly that I am a non-Hispanic or Latino Black male. It is also part of the reason why my parents named me Herbert Nance. So when my resume crossed the hiring manager's desk, they would not be able to assume I was Black. However, after aggressively and consistently seeking full-time employment through recruiters, job boards, and agencies, what I ultimately was met with was not one job offer to gain employment in San Antonio. Why? Sincerely and reluctantly, I am a primary example of the public health crisis of racism, and that predates the COVID-19 pandemic, and why it supports the need for stronger efforts that must be made.